What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And can you guys believe it? We are so close to the upcoming 2024 NFL Draft. Just 2 more sleeps away, and then it's draft season. It's officially draft day. If you guys remember that Kevin Costner movie, Draft Day, guilty pleasure. Not the best movie, completely unrealistic depiction of what happens in the NFL Draft, but you'll be damn right. I will be watching that this week in preparation of the draft because it is just so much fun. But talking about the NFL Draft, crazy trades like in the Draft Day movie, the New York Giants seemingly trying to make a crazy trade of their own. According to Jordan Rannon of ESPN, the Giants have absolutely been calling up to the number 3 overall pick, presumably with their eyes set on UNC quarterback Drake May. Now, a couple things here. If you guys have been following the channel for a long time, you know I've had a draft crush on Drake May for a very long while. I would absolutely love him going from Tar Heel UNC blue to New York Giants Royal blue. It would be a dream come true for me. But how much would the Giants be willing to give up to make that trade happen? We want to speculate about that and just kind of give you guys our reaction to now there's a lot of reports saying that the Giants are trying to trade up. Even Adam Schefter yesterday on the Pat McAfee show, he said that the 2 teams that he's heard have been calling the number 3 pick from the Patriots the most, the Minnesota Vikings number 1, the New York Giants number 2. So there's a lot of smoke here. Where there's smoke, there's usually at least a little bit of a fire, and it sounds like there might be a fire burning with the New York Giants trying to trade up to the number 3 overall pick, again, presumably for Drake May. So we're going to go ahead and dive into all that, have a discussion on what that means. But before we do so, make sure to leave a like if you enjoy this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. And one last thing before I hand it back to you, Alex. Thank you all for all the love and support that you showed on the 20K special. We did put in a lot of work on that one. We're just really happy and thrilled that you guys enjoyed it so much. So once again, thank you very much for that. But Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And how are you feeling about these rumors of the New York Giants presumably trying to trade up for Drake May?
I'm doing pretty good, and as Anthony said, thank you guys so much for tuning into the episode. We'll be doing a lot more really fun stuff as the draft nears, and my goodness, has it been a long, drawn-out offseason, and I am so excited to see what the Giants are going to do. Of course, you guys know our preferences, but now we're starting to get close to the draft, and usually when you get closer, the smoke gets a little bit hotter, and, I kind of feel like there's some truth coming out of these reports, and as I was telling Anthony before the episode started last year, we were starting to hear a lot of news about the Giants loving a cornerback, the Giants liking Deontay Banks, and of course, they go up and get him. So now, today, Jordan Rannon of ESPN is also reporting, as you referenced, the belief is that the Giants want Drake May, and they're looking to trade up to the 3rd overall pick to get him. So Arizona, there's currently a lot of if and buts about what they're going to do. The Minnesota Vikings continuously have been rumored to move up. I think they are going to move up, and I think they are going to get J.J. McCarthy, and I think the Giants are locked and loaded on Drake May, and I think they're going to give the New England Patriots what they need to make it happen, because the Patriots ultimately get this in return. A blue chip wide receiver prospect that now they can get into the system and find the quarterback later, and they'll already have this player there, and future draft capital and current draft capital to continue building out their roster, which is one of the worst in the league. Their offense is literally it's like a burrito bowl, man. It's torn to shreds. It's ugly in there, and ultimately I do think that they could use a couple of really nice quality, high caliber prospects to help overturn that roster, and a quarterback going into that situation is going to fail, and that's kind of where I sit on the matter. Any quarterback going to New England is going to probably fail because they don't have the supporting cast. The Giants just invested a lot in the offensive line. We have multiple free agents there and solid players such as, I think John Michael Schmitz takes a big step forward, and obviously Andrew Thomas is a stud. We have a couple of good receivers in Wandale and Jalen Hyatt and Darius Slayton. Of course, I have an idea in this draft, if you do manage to keep your 2nd round pick, maybe, because to go up to number 3, you're not going to give up your 2025 first rounder and this year's 2nd rounder. Whichever one of those picks you end up keeping, you could consider trying to trade for Brandon Ayuk and getting your WR1 anyway. You get him and a young quarterback, and an offensive line has been heavily invested in. I feel like there is a way to come out on top here. There is a way to come out as a winning team and give your quarterback the necessities they need to develop. Brian Daboll has done it with a lesser prospect in terms of with Josh Allen. When he was coming out of Wyoming, he was not a great player. Like, he had a lot of flaws. He was wildly inaccurate to a degree that people were asking themselves, is he ever going to be able to even make an NFL throw at an accurate pace and an accurate kind of sample size? Drake May is substantially more accurate than he was. And I'm not saying that Drake May is going to become Josh Allen or even better, but what I am saying is that he fits the mold, and this is the player that you matched him up with months ago. You said Drake May is the closest to Josh Allen in this draft class of any player, right? When it comes to that, you look at the dual threat capabilities, you look at the 600 yards on the ground nearly, you look at the 9 touchdowns on the ground, you look at the near 4,000 yards, the 26 touchdown passes, and you look at the fact that he had basically no weapons to work with aside from Tez Walker, right? He had nobody. He had no supporting cast. He didn't have Malik Neighbors. He didn't have Brian Thomas. He didn't have all these guys that you kind of look at and say, well, J.J. McCarthy had Roman Wilson and Blake Corum and the best offensive line in college football and an elite defense to work. Drake May is coming from a school here that offered him minimal support, one of the worst offensive lines, and he still put together film and layered throws and showcased the qualities that I believe. And look, I love Jaden Daniels. Am I going to sit here and tell you I don't want him? Absolutely not. I'm assuming he's going number 2 to the Commanders right now. But Drake May is a perfect fit for what Brian Daboll loves in a quarterback: mobility, gunslinging mentality. He can make all the NFL throws. He's done it with minimal support. The Giants can give him support right away. I think they can build around him. This is not about 2024. This is about 2024 and beyond. They can get out of Daniel Jones' contract, open up a stupendous amount of financial support. It is in their best interest to be aggressive and go get a quarterback. And I'll ask you this for the people that are probably in the comments right now saying, I want Malik Neighbors, Romo Dunze, Marvin Harrison Jr. Would you take Drake May and Brandon Ayuk over a WR1 right now, right? Would you rather trade up and get Drake May and trade for Brandon Ayuk, or stay at 6 and take the best receiver on the board? My perspective, and it will continue to be, you go get the quarterback because it's the most important position on the football field, most important position in sports in general. You go get that guy, and then you put the pieces in around him, and you can still go get that WR1. If you have your second round pick, you can still try to find a high upside WR1, or at least a guy with the upside to be a very good player. Maybe not to get to that elite prospect level, but nonetheless, you have to try. In my opinion, I'm taking Drake May. I'm using that second rounder or future first rounder to trade for Brandon Ayuk if I can, and I'm walking away with a WR1 and my future at quarterback, and then you save $30 million max next year from Daniel Jones, leaving and departing in free agency because they'll inevitably cut him in that scenario. But what do you think about that? What would you do in that scenario? Drake May, use that other pick to maybe acquire Brandon Ayuk or draft a receiver, or are you sticking and picking at wide receiver because we haven't had a WR1 in a couple years, and obviously it is a hole that we need to address.
So you guys know my preference. I want the New York Giants to trade up and draft Drake May, and I'm willing to pay a pretty large sum in order to make that happen. But no, on draft night, when we do our live reactions, by no means will I be upset if the Giants don't do that, because you can absolutely understand why that's a tough bridge to sell. Sacrificing all those assets to draft a quarterback, especially out of UNC. I know that there's a lot of hesitancy around quarterbacks from certain schools. The ACC is one that brings some people caution. I get that. There is a tough bridge to sell here. Sacrificing that draft capital to take a quarterback at number 3. If you miss on that quarterback, you're pretty much screwed, right? Like, you got to get it right. But that's the thing, is if you do get this right, and if you are right about Drake May and you do develop him, you are probably looking at a player that could be top 10 at his position in the NFL based on his tools, traits, and production during his collegiate career. It all matches up with the trajectory that other great quarterbacks in the NFL have been on in the past. So I do believe that would be the right decision. But again, like I said, if the Giants stick and pick at 6, I'm not complaining, because that could shake out one of two ways. Either they stick and pick at 6 and a quarterback falls into their lap at 6, whether that be May, Daniels, or J.J. McCarthy, who you guys know I also do like, or they're going at number 6 and taking the best player available, which is going to be a star wide receiver who probably goes for 1,000 receiving yards as a rookie, no matter who is throwing him the football. So I'm not going to complain if the Giants don't trade up. I'm going to be thrilled if they do, because I'm a gambling man. I like to risk it all on that quarterback and hope that you're building around the right guy and hit on him. That's what you want to see. But if that doesn't happen for the New York Giants, I mean, listen, taking that best player available at 6, that could be Malik Neighbors, who you guys all know I'm very high on, and I think is going to be an absolute stud at the next level. I think the same of Rome Odunze. I think the same of Marvin Harrison Jr. The Giants take any one of those 3 guys, I'm going to be thrilled. They trade up to 3, I'm going to be thrilled. There's very few things that the Giants can do on Thursday night that I will be upset by. Taking Joe Alt at 6 will probably upset me, and my take on Joe Alt is that he is a dominant offensive tackle prospect, the best in the class, and will step into the NFL and be a good player from day one. But it's all about allocation of resources and assets for the New York Giants. I will be upset if they go offensive line in the first round, despite how good of a prospect Joe Alt is. I will also be upset if they draft a pass rusher. I think we've invested enough into that regard. And depending on what they trade down for, I may or may not be upset with a potential trade down because I really like the talent on the board. But that's all to say, whatever the Giants do on Thursday night, pretty much any way you slice it, I'm probably going to be a happy guy. I'm going to be happy if they take a quarterback. I'm going to be happy if they take a playmaker. And if they trade down and they do get an absolute haul for next year, I'll probably be happy about that as well. So the Giants picking at number 6, is it ideal? Is it where we want to be? No, we wish that we were in the top 3, which is why we're trying to trade up and get into the top 3. But picking at 6, the Giants really are in an absolutely perfect situation. You could slice it a million different ways, and probably half of those ways that you slice it, you're just going to love the outcome. So I'm going to be really happy on Thursday if the Giants do trade up for Drake May. I like the way that you broke him down, Alex. All of the things that you mentioned, his pros, his cons, his strengths, his weaknesses, pretty good analysis there. One thing that I will say, though, about Drake May, since you made the comparison to Josh Allen, which, of course, you mentioned that I've made plenty of times before on the show, with Josh Allen, you do have to keep in mind there were a lot of question marks when he entered the NFL about his accuracy issues, about his ability to play in a pro-style offense. And don't get me wrong, Josh Allen was a bad quarterback his first 2 seasons in the NFL. He did not play well. His touchdown percentage was low. His interception rate was high. Turnover-worthy plays, all of that stuff. Accuracy issues galore. But then his 3rd season in the NFL, I've actually read about this, done research on this, and I didn't do this offseason because the Giants might be drafting a quarterback. I actually did this research in 2022 when Brian Daboll was hired because I wanted to see him maximize Daniel Jones. So I started to do some research. How could he maximize Daniel Jones? And I actually found this really great old Pro Football Focus article about the development of Josh Allen. And it discussed how the first 2 seasons in Buffalo, the offense that Brian Daboll ran was drastically different from the one that he ran in the 3rd season. He ran an offense that he thought would cater more to his skill set at the collegiate level and help him translate to the league a little bit easier, and it didn't work out. So Brian Daboll in that 3rd season completely tore it down, rebuilt the offensive scheme from scratch to maximize the strengths of Josh Allen, and then you had pretty much MVP level Josh Allen, MVP runner-up in 2022, his 3rd season in the NFL. So I make that point to say, with quarterbacks, sometimes they take a little bit longer to develop, and you do have to be patient, but you have to have the right coach in place to develop that player. And the Giants have Brian Daboll. He knows how to develop a solid quarterback. He's gotten great play out of backup quarterbacks as well. Look at Tommy DeVito and Tyrod Taylor. Actually winning games with those guys down the stretch is a testament to Brian Daboll's ability to get the most out of quarterbacks. But again, looking at quarterbacks, the development of them, sometimes it takes a while, and sometimes you need to be bold. You got to tear it down and rebuild and start over. You have to have a coach that's willing to do those things and go all in and push their chips into the middle of the table and say, I am betting on this quarterback. And again, Brian Daboll is that guy. So if Brian Daboll is willing to trade up for Drake May or J.J. McCarthy or Jaden Daniels, whoever, and is willing to say, I can push my chips into the table the same way that I did with Josh Allen and make this guy a superstar, I'm going to push my chips in on Brian Daboll and bet on him because I've seen him win this bet before, and I believe that he's going to win it again because it's not based on chance, it's based on talent, and Brian Daboll has a tremendous amount of talent when it comes to evaluating and developing quarterback talent. And again, Josh Allen, the player that he was his first 2 seasons, completely different from his 3rd. A lot of that is he worked hard, he got better himself. Also, a lot of it is the fact that Brian Daboll kept developing, kept changing the scheme and tweaking it, and eventually found what clicked for Josh Allen and made him work into a superstar at the NFL level. And I do believe with Drake May, the pros and the cons to Drake May are very similar to Josh Allen. The strengths and the weaknesses, there's a lot of similarities in their game, and that's why I think that Josh Allen, or rather Brian Daboll, could absolutely maximize the skill set that Drake May brings to the table and really hone something in there. And one of the other things that I do want to mention, a potential trade. Alex, you mentioned, would you rather have Drake May and Brandon Ayuk, or would you rather have the playmaker at 6? The thing that I will say to just kind of give you some pushback and challenge your thoughts, trading for Brandon Ayuk is going to be very difficult. There is a competitive market. We know of at least 3 teams that have already expressed interest. I believe the Steelers are one of them. I don't remember who the other team, I think it's the Patriots, the Giants as well have called, but there are rumors going around that multiple teams have already made those phone calls. Trading for Brandon Ayuk after already sacrificing draft capital for Drake May is probably going to be difficult and maybe even impossible. So if he does end up getting traded on draft night, but I will pivot, and while I'm going to kind of push back on the potential Brandon Ayuk plus Drake May trade because I think it's going to be too difficult to pull off, I will just mention it's not Brandon Ayuk or bust, right, Alex? There are other wide receivers around the league that could be had at a cheaper price tag. We talked about Courtland Sutton recently. You can probably trade for Courtland Sutton using a 3rd-round draft pick, and Courtland Sutton had 10 touchdowns last year, and in the right offense, very likely could go for over 1,000 receiving yards and be one of the league's premier outside receiving threats. How about T. Higgins if you want to make a huge splash and trade future draft capital for him, right? There are other wide receivers that will be on the trade block, whether now or midway through the season. We've seen midway season trades happen as well, so I just think that it's important to note that you can definitely find wide receiver talent in the NFL. And another important note, if you look at the top 10 wide receivers based on salary in the NFL right now, I believe it's 80%, and don't quote me on the number, but I think it's 80% of them were drafted outside of the first round. And when you're looking at how stacked this draft class is at the wide receiver position, and then you take a look at the history of the wide receiver position, banking on a later round talent to pan out at wide receiver, you have a far higher chance of that happening than a later round talent at quarterback. So that should pretty much tell you where I lean and where the Giants should go. If they're going to allocate early draft capital to one of these 2 positions, you got to go QB, and you got to hope that you land one of the many great wide receivers that ends up getting drafted in the middle to late rounds every single year, because every single year it does end up happening. You just have to hope that you are the team that identifies that talent in the middle rounds. I mean, I can name 2 off the top of my head from last year. You have Puka Nacua, obviously. He's the one that stands out as a later round pick that absolutely blossomed immediately in the NFL. Tank Dell didn't go early. He was, I think, a 3rd-round pick. He was great for the Texans last season before getting injured. Rashee Rice, 2nd-round pick, Super Bowl champion. Now we got some questions about him off the field, but was dominant on the field at times last year. So, again, that's really my major point here with the New York Giants. You got to prioritize QB in the first round, not only because it is the most important position in the sport, and you've got Brian Dable, and you want to maximize his talents of developing QBs, but you also have to take into account the history of the wide receiver position in the draft and acknowledge a lot of talent gets found at that position outside of the first round. In fact, the majority of the talent that pans out into becoming a superstar happens outside of the first round. So I think that's an interesting note to have. And again, just to reiterate, I will be thrilled if the Giants take a playmaker in the first round, if they take Malik Neighbors at number 6 or Marvin Harrison, whoever it is. But you just have to keep in mind that there is a much higher probability of hitting on a mid to late round wide receiver than there is on a mid to late round quarterback.
I mean, you're not wrong, right? Like you obviously have to prioritize quarterback. Risking it, like assuming you can get Brandon Ayuk is obviously just it was more of just like an option to pursue, not a guarantee, obviously. But look, the truth is simple, guys. I just looked through, we were just talking about this before the episode started. The argument that you can win a Super Bowl without an elite quarterback, that's where you have to start. Right, the goal of any team is to win a Super Bowl. I don't really care about making the playoffs and losing. Daniel Jones making the playoffs, winning a playoff game and losing does not do anything for me. It doesn't convince me that he can win a Super Bowl because he obviously got blown out by the Eagles the week after that. So, speaking about, where the Giants need to go and what it takes to win a Super Bowl, the last 5 Super Bowls, you want to know who won them? 3 of them were Patrick Mahomes. It was Matt Stafford, who had a phenomenal year, and Tom Brady. Who the hell do you think is beating those guys, right? Who is beating Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs? It's certainly not Daniel Jones. I don't care how many people tell me we haven't given him the right amount of support. You're not going to be able to. What if I told you that $50 million cap hit? What support? What support do you think we're going to give Daniel Jones in the next 2 years that is going to make him a Super Bowl winning quarterback? It's not possible. There's no money to spend. Draft picks? You think our rookies or second-year players are going to step in and help win Super Bowls and help Daniel Jones become an elite quarterback? No, it's complete. It's just mind-numbing to me. That's even a narrative, right? So with that being said, You got to get the quarterback you have conviction in. We hired Brian Dable to develop a player. Drake May seems to be the guy the Giants really like. Go get your quarterback. Go get your guy. Go get the guy that's going to lead you to a much brighter pasture, a much greener pasture. Brian Dable was given a quarterback that came with a number of flaws already at the NFL level. Inability to read through progressions and get through those progressions at an efficient pace and read the field efficiently. The inability to stand in the pocket and take and maneuver in the pocket at a high level. He taught him how to do a lot of those things. But it's not enough because now he's coming off an ACL tear and has a $45 million cap hit in 2025. It's not sustainable. I'm sorry. I wish it was. I wish I could sit here and tell you that I think Daniel Jones could be great. His cap hit wasn't awful. He's not coming off a torn ACL. I wish I could sit here and tell you those things could go away. But they're not going away. It's reality. We have to base our logic in reality. And this is reality. The Giants need a new quarterback. And John Mara came out into the public and said this verbatim. The front office told me this is one of the best quarterback draft classes we have seen in a very long time. You really want to, and look, whoever, if you're sitting on your couch right now listening to this, are you willing to sit here and tell me that you know more than Brian Dable and Joe Schoen about the quarterbacks in this draft class? Are you willing to sit here and tell me you know more than they do? I mean, they don't know. I certainly don't know more than they do. Anthony, you certainly don't know more than they do. I'm going to take their word. All right, I'll give you a little bit of slack there. Maybe you do know a thing or two. But the truth is this, guys. If they have conviction in a player that they believe can be great, and they hire Brian Dable to do this exact thing that we're talking about, develop a young player who's 21 years old, and Drake May, if that's the direction they want to go in, if that's the quarterback they feel like can be the best, and they have a chance to get him, they should not hesitate, because having Malik Neighbors does not matter if you don't have an elite quarterback to maximize that talent, right? Brock Purdy, good player, maybe even a great player. He was in the MVP conversation last year, but he's in a system that makes him look so good. If he was on the Giants, we'd be talking about him being a second stringer right now. That's honestly how I feel about how good of a situation Brock Purdy fell into. Maybe I'm crazy for that, but he has one of the best offensive lines in football, Christian McCaffrey, 2 WR1s, and one of the best tight ends in the game. The Giants can offer him a sliver of that. So it is a lot about situations, in my opinion, in terms of where quarterbacks end up developing, how they end up developing. I think that Drake May has the qualities to be a very good player, and Brian Dable's the right coach for him. Brock Purdy is in a perfect scheme, a perfect situation with Kyle Shanahan's offense, and he still can't beat Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So do we really think we can't do it? That we can't do it without an elite quarterback?
Well, I think Brock Purdy is an elite quarterback personally. I think he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And yes, I understand that a lot of that is the system and the scheme that he plays in. But because of all that, he is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I agree with that. That's my opinion. And I actually don't think that my hot take here, and you know how much I love Kyle Shanahan. Anecdotally speaking, I've mentioned him and praised him so many times on this channel. I don't think Brock Purdy lost to Patrick Mahomes. Kyle Shanahan lost to Patrick Mahomes. He made some really bad calls down the stretch, just like he did when he was the offensive coordinator of the Falcons when they lost to the New England Patriots in, what was that, Super Bowl 53, I think? I don't know. We all remember 28-3. Shanahan just has a knack for choking those moments away, and I think that's what happened in this game. I don't blame Brock Purdy. I think that Brock Purdy is a tremendous talent, and yes, sure, game manager in a perfect situation. A lot of people in that perfect situation still wouldn't find the success. He's very good at doing those things that manage a game well and making the plays when he needs to. When he's facing a 3rd and 9 and he's got to make the throw, he's not checking it down underneath the sticks. He's throwing it past the sticks and usually completing it. So you do got to give credit to Brock Purdy for being really good at what he does in that system. And that system plus Brock Purdy does make him a top 10 QB in the NFL, in my opinion. But that kind of is an off-tangent discussion that I will tie into in saying, you are right about situation. Brock Purdy, I don't think, would be a second stringer elsewhere, but he probably wouldn't be a top 10 quarterback elsewhere. He just wouldn't have the ability to maximize all the talent and the situation around him. And that is true as well for some of the quarterbacks in this draft class. I'm going to go ahead and say that I think Drake May has the potential to be a top 10 quarterback. I'm not going to ever say he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. I'm never going to promise something like that because ultimately, you are right, it does come down to the situation that he lands in. If Drake May goes to Washington, I feel less confident about him becoming a top 10 quarterback than I feel if he goes to Minnesota. Minnesota has Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson and a good offensive line plus Kevin O'Connell. That is a better situation. Whichever quarterback gets drafted by Minnesota is probably going to have a better rookie season than the one that goes to Washington, who has a very bad offensive line and only one good weapon in Terry McLaurin, who is rather inconsistent at times. So you can make this argument for these players, who's going to be the best QB in the class, who's going to boom, who's going to bust. At the end of the day, we're not going to know who's going to have that success and who's going to fail until we see what teams they're playing on and what those teams put onto the field for their quarterbacks in the upcoming season. And the only way that you can have a situation nice enough for a quarterback, though, for the quarterback to succeed, is really you got to have the coach. You got to have the right coach in place. That is the end-all, be-all, in my opinion, for these quarterback prospects. I think you can even make an argument that had Daniel Jones had a different coach as a rookie and as a sophomore and didn't have all the overturn of coaching, he would be a better player than he is right now. We wouldn't be having this conversation about moving on from him right now, potentially. You could totally make that argument. You can make that argument for a number of quarterbacks. Maybe if Sam Darnold had a good coach when he was drafted. When Sam Darnold was drafted in 2018, if he had Kyle Shanahan, maybe he would be a great quarterback right now. Who knows? You could just always slice up those conversations in so many different ways. Because of situation, though, it is so important that you put a quarterback into the right situation. Otherwise, you are right, Alex, they will be held back and they won't reach their potential. But that's what you're banking on in the NFL draft. At the quarterback position, the receiver position, every position, you are banking on potential and you are hoping that you draft a high potential player, develop him to realize his potential, and build a good team around him. Having the one player by himself is not enough. You got to find a way to realize his potential and build around him properly. And that's going to be my argument with these quarterbacks. The potential on these quarterbacks, in my opinion, all four of the top guys in this class, is higher than the potential of sticking with Daniel Jones and is higher than the potential of gambling on taking a quarterback in next year's draft or trying to trade for one or sign a veteran next offseason. I just like the potential of these top four quarterbacks better than those other scenarios, the potential that's held into those, which is why I think that the Giants need to maximize potential in the draft, need to target a quarterback. And again, last point that I will make on this whole discussion, Jordan Rannon last year, the day of the draft or the day before, maybe it was 2 days before like it is right now, basically said on one of his podcasts and shows, Deonte Banks is who I'm hearing that the Giants like the most. Then they went ahead and they traded up and drafted Deonte Banks. Jordan Rannon's very plugged in when it comes to the draft for the New York Giants. So him telling us all today that the Giants have been actively calling to trade up, meanwhile Adam Schefter said the same thing, they are definitely trying to trade up. They are definitely making those phone calls. This is not just smoke screens. They're definitely doing those things, in my opinion. You can disagree with me, but I believe that they are trying to make these trades. Whether or not it gets done is a whole nother topic of conversation, because there's going to be a bidding war. There's going to be price tags thrown out there that maybe the Giants aren't willing to pay. That's a whole nother thing. But Jordan Rannon saying that the Giants are trying to trade up, Adam Schefter saying it, I do believe it. I think that they are trying to, and I do believe they have their sights set on Drake May. Now it's just about whether or not they can come to terms on a deal with the New England Patriots. But we're also hearing a lot of how the Patriots are not really willing to trade down, and it's going to take a Godfather offer. And that's where it's going to get really difficult for the New York Giants. But Alex, we are 2 days away from the draft. I do think that those rumors, the smoke that's there's got to be a fire somewhere. How are you feeling 2 days away from the draft? You know, looking at this Drake May rumor and anything else, what's really standing out to you?
I mean, I've just been scouring Twitter really and looking for all the smoke and news, and even Peter Schrager, who, by the way, I'm pretty sure is really close with Joe Shane. He just said the same thing. He said the two teams he's been hearing, Minnesota and the Giants, trying to get to number 3 to get Drake May. And I'll tell you one thing, one of those teams can't offer them a blue chip wide receiver prospect. One of those teams is going to have to, the Vikings are going to have to move, obviously, back. And look, the Patriots can end up with J.J. McCarthy. It's possible they like him more. They're willing to give the Drake May to the Giants. And J.J. McCarthy may be there at 6, but, also how about the Cardinals if they want to move back? I don't think the Cardinals want to move on from 4. I think they want a superstar receiver prospect. I think they want Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think they want to move out of that spot. The Chargers, they have their pick of blue chip wide receiver or Joe Alt. So I feel like they're in a good spot too. The Vikings are trying to move up heavy. And listen, the Giants just have the better player to offer and draft capital in the future. So I think that there was a narrative that, that the Vikings have more to offer than the Giants. I think that's complete nonsense. Complete nonsense. You're missing out on the top 3 wide receiver in this draft class. And wide receivers, if there's any indication of how valuable a receiver is, look at the draft, look at free agency this year. Gabe Davis is getting paid $13+ million per season, for God's sake. Malik Neighbors instantly is worth $25+ million per season. Marvin Harrison Jr., $25+ million per season. Romo Dunze, around that same range too. You're immediately taking a massive expense and extracting it from your needs. If you're the Patriots or if you're another team that wants a receiver, the Giants are in a really good spot to move up. I think that 6th overall pick is extremely valuable. So with that being said, I think the Giants are more than fine, more than equipped to move up a couple spots. Jordan Rondon is saying it. Ian Rappaport is saying it. Peter Schrager's saying it. All the big guys are saying it. Where there's smoke, there is fire. The Giants want a quarterback. As a consolation prize, I'm not going to be upset if we land a top receiver. Don't get me wrong. But I am very much expecting them to be extremely aggressive over the next 48 hours leading up to the draft to get a framework of a deal in place that would make it happen. The Patriots obviously are telling everybody, there hasn't been a deal that we like just yet. Why would they say that they like any of the deals? There's no incentive for them to say to anybody, yeah, we actually like what the Giants are offering. We want to strike a deal with the Giants or the Patriots, or rather the Vikings. Why would they give away their leverage like that? They're gonna drag this thing until the final minute of this pick, because it is in their best interest to do so. They're going to get extra picks out of it. They're going to get more draft capital. They're going to get maybe a player that they didn't think they could get, because one of those 2 teams is going to bite the bullet and give up the extra capital to do it. So yeah, I'm not expecting anything until draft day, but I'm pretty confident right now the Giants are going to be aggressive. Joe Shane, we've seen him do it before, and I think he's going to do it again.
Yeah, obviously we'll probably lock in our final predictions for the draft tomorrow. Spoiler alert, I don't think the Giants are going to be able to get up for the number 3 pick, although I think they're going to try. And it's going to be a lot of fun on our draft live stream. Make sure you guys tune into that. If the Giants do end up trading up, you will see us live react to that move being made in real time as we watch the draft live together here on the channel. We hope that you all join us for that. Stay tuned. More info to come, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Thursday night, tune in to Fireside Giants. The live stream is going to be a blast. We're super excited. Going to do the whole first round. At least I will for sure. I'll definitely watch the whole first round. And it's just going to be a blast, man. Stay tuned to that. But that pretty much wraps this one up. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, we'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Giants.
Perfect.